All right, a good Saturday night to you. I'm Fox 26 meteorologist John Dawson. Needed to jump in here and give you one last update on a Saturday about what we're doing with Beryl out in the Gulf of Mexico. And you can see over the last several hours, Beryl has become not so great looking as far as the rain is concerned, really beginning to try to fall apart a little bit. But this is really just something that we're observing from the satellites, and mainly it's just a decrease in rain that's happening right around that center of circulation. The center of circulation is really more in this area right here. It's not where all of the rain was and is falling apart. Our circulation is more in this area, and our water vapor imagery kind of shows that it was falling apart a little bit. I'm going to get into that in just a moment, but just kind of wanted to start things off and give you that official forecast track that's out from the National Hurricane Center. Maximum sustained winds still at 60 miles an hour, and we're looking at about 85 mile an hour winds at that landfall early on Monday morning, right in Matagorda Bay, which would be just sort of to the east of where Corpus Christi is. And that is going to be a system that will, again, bring a lot of rain, but certainly some wind and higher storm surge right along wherever that landfall takes place. And then we'll maintain that tropical cyclone, that tropical storm strength for at least Monday evening. And then once we get into Tuesday morning, that starts to weaken a little bit more into the depression status. Our exclusive Fox model shows that the landfall might be a little bit geared towards Corpus Christi. So again, I showed you what the Hurricane Center is putting out, but our model here looks to want to take it just a little bit closer in to Corpus Christi, but noticing again all of the rain that's going to be associated with that, and then once it makes that landfall, sort of jogging over a little into the Bay of Matagorda, and then making more of a northerly track as it continues to move on up and out of the picture. We like the fact that it has enough movement that we won't be looking at days and days of rain, but certainly that rainfall total that we are expecting could be enough to cause some problems, and there are some flooding potential that's associated with that. So here is what we know pretty much at this point, is that this will be a rainmaker for more people than it will be a wind threat. But where the winds are the highest, we're certainly going to be expecting some power outages to kind of follow along. And then, of course, right along the coast, we already have seen voluntary evacuation notices that have been put forth in Matagorda County, I know of. I also know that just within the last hour, the city of Galveston has done the voluntary evacuation for the west end of Galveston Island. I think pretty much past the seawall to the west of where the seawall ends is a voluntary evacuation, because we're just even as far north as Galveston expecting to see some of that storm surge come up and impact some of the roadways. Now, if the storm gets a little bit stronger, because we are expecting what would probably be considered a rapid intensification. For sure, it's going to grow stronger before it makes that landfall. If it gets a little bit stronger than that 85 mile an hour winds, then we'll look for even more problems from the winds with more power outages, and those storm surge would even reach further up the coast and even be higher in some places. We have a hurricane warning right now for basically where Brazoria County and Galveston County meet. That's all the way down the coast past Corpus Christi. Hurricane watch a little bit further. These are basically based on the winds. The storm surge warning and watch are also very similar in their layout on where those expectations are, including Galveston Bay on the storm surge. And then a lot more people are under this flood watch, and that's because of this excessive rainfall, a lot of rain that we are expecting with this system. So I don't want to try to downplay the winds or the storm surge, because that's certainly going to be a very strong threat. But I think the flooding will be impacting more people overall because of these high amounts of rainfall in a short amount of time. I think for the most part, it won't be a long-term event like we were talking about days long, but it is going to be causing some problems. So here's those computer models following pretty close to the track. I told you how on the west side of that we see where the Fox model lands, the American, the European, they're all kind of mixed in here pretty tight in basically looking at Matagorda Bay, somewhere along that vicinity for that landfall. The Weather Prediction Center, you know, they always have their excessive rainfall outlook, which is where you're going to see some flooding. This issues all the time, especially in the spring. Well, they're issuing it for tropical systems as well. Most of the rain that we're getting across southeast Texas on Sunday is going to be very manageable, I think. There might be an isolated problem or two, but we see the widespread problems on Monday when we really start to see that landfall, and closer to the center of that circulation, we'll be seeing more storms, stronger storms, and repeatedly hitting the same area. So that's why we're looking for a larger risk for some of that flooding. But we do include the city of Houston and most of the metro area in that. And you're going to see that here when we look at some of these rainfall accumulation on our computer modeling. That Sunday, again, rain is going to be pretty manageable. Now we're getting into Monday morning. And a couple things I want you to note here. First of all, get some high rain totals in a short amount of time. And then look at this, how sharp this line will be from where we're seeing the heavy rain and where we're seeing very little rain on the west side of that center of circulation. But over on the east side of that circulation, it's tapered off a lot more, right? You've got the very, very heavy amounts, and then you've got some higher amounts, and then a little bit less and a little bit less, and finally you get the even way over to the east, you're still getting some of that rain. And that's what we would continue to expect. So if you're over on the west side of this storm, if you're in Gonzales, if you're in San Antonio, or even Columbus, will be a very fine line. Looks like we're going to get drenched on this model, but when we see even like the folks over in Austin, some of that could be a very sharp edge of a lot of rain or very little rain. And you see the city of Houston in here right in that 4 to 6 inch of range is what we've been looking. So in very general terms, we're telling everybody to be ready for 5 to 10 inches of rain. And then these isolated spots, and this would be the isolated range here, that swath that's pretty narrow, that's going to see probably more in the 10 to 15, maybe even some isolated spots even higher than that. So this extends all the way into Tuesday. So we're going to see we've got a Fox 26 storm alert day on Tuesday in the morning, primarily because of some of that rain lingering over. So after a quiet Saturday night, we see some of these bands of rain start to kind of get feeding into the southeast Texas. As I mentioned, I think most of this will be manageable. If a band really starts hitting the same area over and over again, then we might have some problems. Pause it here at around 2:30 in the morning. That might be a little early for a landfall, depending on exactly where it happens, but for sure, look at all of this rain that's going to be coming into the area before the actual landfall takes place. So that's going to really kick in on Sunday night, early on Monday morning, and then this is going to wrap around and impact much of the Houston area. But by the time we get to the afternoon, around 3 o'clock or so, we're getting Beryl moving across other portions of the state. So rain chances 50% on Sunday. As I mentioned, I think most of that is going to be something that doesn't interrupt our lives too much. It's Monday that we're really focused on for the most part, especially with those higher winds. Expect some problems with some power outages, and then your coastal areas, storm surge. You might be, again, if you haven't evacuated, you might be sort of stuck in one place for hours while that rains come through, and eventually that storm surge will kind of recede a little bit and you can get back to more of an everyday pattern. But some of that extending into Tuesday morning as well. We do have some rain in the forecast for the rest of the week, not necessarily tropical related, but it is going to be something that kind of adds to whatever rain that we've already going to be able to receive from the tropical system from Beryl, whether it be a tropical storm or a hurricane at landfall. All right, this is going to do it for your 10 p.m. update. When we get into tomorrow morning, of course, Fox 26 News starts at 5 a.m. and then we'll be keeping you updated throughout the day as necessary with the developments of Beryl, and then for sure we're here ready for you on Monday to track this storm and all that it brings to southeast Texas.